And welcome to the Red Man Group, episode 97, healing from toxic relationships with special guest Richard Grannon. Let me get that off there. Yeah, perfect. So we'll pull him in here, Mr. Richard Grannon, and also joining us, he's from Spartan Life Coach on YouTube. You can look up Richard Grannon or Spartan Life Coach, pull him right up. We also have today, of course, joining us Steve the Dean Williams, the one and only. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we've had obviously you guys know Steve, regular on the show, host of the Red Man Mindset, all these things. Richard Grannon has been on the show a couple times before. Way back in like 2018, we did a couple episodes on dangerous personalities in women, cluster Bs, borderlines, things like that. The Hell's Angels, so to speak, of women. And then I don't know, he might have come on once later, but then he also went on the Red Man Group in Poland. We did 2 episodes live in Warsaw, Poland, after the convention at the end of it. And that was really great. Richard Grannon was also a speaker for the first time at the 21 convention in 2019 in Florida or Poland, and he gave a full presentation there on his whole thing. And then he also did a workshop we'll talk about, for an extended workshop for like 3 hours on surviving female psychopaths. Well, from surviving to thriving. Really fascinating topic that many of you might relate to. Richard was also supposed to be a speaker in 2018 at the convention, and then he had a medical issue at the last minute and he had to pull out. And he actually ended up, funny pull out, haha, no pun intended. But
I don't usually.
Jesus. He gave us a speech basically that he was going to give at the convention, and a lot of you've seen that on YouTube. I'll actually pull that up in a second here. You guys, this went really viral. So surviving, yeah. Well, let me pull it up here. So you guys can actually see this. Then we'll go to his channel for a second here. Yeah. So this talk here, Surviving the Female Narcissist, A Deconstruction by Richard Grannon, this has been absolutely celebrated in the Manosphere, and it was his kind of breakthrough into the Manosphere community and providing some real value, some real content that no one had ever seen before at this level. And this is a whole speech he gave on it, and you guys can see that on our YouTube channel. He has clips of it on his channel as well. And his channel is actually right here, Spartan Life Coach, now retitled Richard Grannon. He's pushing in on 200,000 subscribers. He's growing rapidly, blowing up. Might even surpass 21 Studios soon. So fuck yeah. Beyond this little introduction I just gave you, Rich, can you actually tell our audience, for those of them that don't know you, like what you're about before we get into today's content?
Yeah, sure. It's probably going to be relevant to a lot of the guys watching. My background was actually in teaching self-defense, and my original project was called streetfightsecrets.com, and that was like real world defensive tactics for guys who could potentially be using it tonight or this weekend. So after about 7 or 8 years of developing it, we got to the point where it was actually taken on by the air marshals, and it was being used by the UK Riot Centre. So it was this big thing. We had a lot of guys, bodyguards, soldiers, nightclub bouncers, MMA fighters, boxers, you name it, tough guys. And I'd get into it with them and I'd start talking to them, and every single one of them was getting completely mashed at home by wives, girlfriends, sometimes with their kids, sometimes with family members, because they had this sort of like good soldier mentality where they would sacrifice themselves. And in our culture, the way it is now, that's rewarded. That's seen as being extremely an honorable good thing for a man to do, is to sacrifice his wants and desires for everybody else.
To be a sacrificial lamb, basically.
Absolutely, sacrificial lambs, like lambs to slaughter. And every single one of these tough guys, though, is isolating with the man pain and going, okay, well, suck it up, bro, because you shouldn't be feeling this way. And of course, that would lead to heightened suicide rates of addiction, and all kinds of very serious problems. And I resonated deeply with that because I was the same guy. I was there with my globally recognized brand. Police were on the phone to me, the air marshal, the chief instructor based in Las Vegas, the air marshal would be like, we had a problem this week in training. Our guys can't do this. Can you fix it? And I'd be like, okay, I guess I'll work that out for you. Meanwhile, my girlfriend, who was living with me at the time, was running rings around me. So I'm a self-protection expert, traveling the globe, teaching people how to protect themselves psychologically and physically. I can't defend myself from a 24-year-old dancer girlfriend. Can't. And she was destroying me in MMA terms.
Dancer, huh?
Yes, she was good at dancing.
Oh, sure. Jesus.
And
I have no room to
so
talk. I have no room to talk. So I get it, dude.
so she was in the entertainment business. So I felt tremendous shame. So I couldn't share that with anybody. So I was internalizing it too. And I realized that I had a problem. A lot of the guys I was talking to had a problem. So I did a breakaway little like life coaching on relationship issues for these guys. And I was like, what should I call it? I'll give it a super masculine sounding name, like the Spartan Life Coach. And it started out like that. Spartan Life Coach eventually exploded once I started touching the buttons with the videos on issues like narcissism and psychopathy. Then it just blew up. The videos that went viral were the ones where people would say, talk about narcissism. And I'm like, I don't really know that I believe that that's a thing that exists. Back in 2012 when it started, I knew about it, but I knew about it from a conspiracy theorist's point of view. So I'd be like, who's the most evil people in the world? They'll be narcissistic psychopaths. I didn't really think of it in terms of relationship. Once I opened that door, I realized it explained a tremendous amount that was going on in my own life. Started to get to the root cause. We're looking at childhood trauma. We're looking at absent fathers. We're looking at a smothering attachment style by mothers where they sort of consume their kids and they can't draw boundaries with their kids.
So that would be
Fathers
like a single mom, like raising a mama's boy or something like that.
well, that which is me. You know, that was my lived experience. My father was disappeared. He was in prison because he's a bad dude, and my mom was left. You know, I look back and I'm like, obviously with time and experience and maturity, you develop this kind of a compassion. You're like, my God, you know, she was really young. She did the best she could with what she knew at that time, but she didn't know very fucking much. So then you have like bad coping strategies, alcohol being used, and just a lot. Like you can just see this like this shitstorm with all the ingredients there to produce really hellish conditions in which to grow that make it hard to adult. It makes it hard to be a man. So I struggled through my 20s and 30s. I was clawing my way through trying to grow up and be a man without any kind of guidance, without any kind of
You need the man
proper,
mindset, bro.
well, that you know, well, one of the people that I would attach to fictional characters or famous people, and one of my big turning points was Patrice O'Neill. Was listening to
Yeah.
Patrice O'Neill, and that changed my whole mind. But I was discussing this at length with Steve in Poland. Patrice O'Neill was like broad brushstrokes philosophy of how it is, but not that much on solutions. And then Steve, to me, is the solution side of that. So you have Patrice O'Neill because he's a great stand-up comedian, in my opinion, the best who's ever lived.
Wow.
And he had this great perspective. So he'd go, here's the problem. Beautiful, perfect. And then you'd be like, what's the solution? Yeah. Steve's your man for the actual granular solutions for the problems that Patrice laid out. But
yeah, and I forgot to mention that you two got to. I remember that I think the first time you guys met like right when you showed up. We were in the hotel in Poland, and
yes.
I was like, oh, nice Steve and Rich get to meet. This is interesting. It's yes. It's really fun for me to see when speakers meet and the personalities kind of bump into each other and see what happens. Are they going to fight? Are they going to get along? What's going on here? Yeah. You guys, of course, everyone gets along great usually, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick for those listening, man, I love this guy. I was going to get some chicken. Don't judge me. I was looking for some chicken in the mall.
What kind of chicken? Right was it grilled chicken, fried chicken? What kind of chicken we talking here?
Yeah, right. But I saw Richard, and we sat down and we just talked. It was like time flew. It was like we've known. It's like when you connect with someone, you like feel like you've known them for a long time. We just sat and we just talked, and it was awesome, man. I didn't mean to interrupt the thing, but it was awesome, man. It was awesome.
Well, we should talk about the convention a little bit because I don't think we ever had Rich. You were there. Like, what was your experience of it, man? That was your first time not just meeting me and Steve, but your first time seeing a Manosphere event. And
I think, yeah. I mean, I think I said to you at the time, it's, and I think you told me this beforehand. Like, you'd said something like, "You're gonna like it. You're gonna really love it." But I can't. You said to me, "I can't really describe to you what it's like, what you're going to get from it." And so for me, it was an amazing experience hearing the speakers as an audience member. That was great. But chatting to guys outside, I learned so much. I mean, you talk about, like, we're joking about Steve. So I sat down with Steve for a 1-hour session, and then he was kind enough, extremely generous with his time, gave me another 2-hour session. I was just downloading information. I was going, oh shit. Like, I was looking at him going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And he's going, yeah, that's why you can't do it with a da. And I was like, oh, okay. So there was a lot of that there. There was a lot of just like, I'm a sponge because I'm new to your field. I'm new to this thing. I had a lot of questions. And it was great to see guys helping guys just helping each other out. You got young men there who don't know anything. You got the older soldiers who've been through the war, a little bit more battle scarred, and they're like, well, just come over here. Everybody's super generous with their time, super generous with their information. And I learned a fuck of a lot in the 4 days that was there. So yeah, it was a good positive experience, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was awesome having you out too, man. I think I thought Jack Donovan would be like the biggest speaker there, but you at the end of the day, I think stole the show. The speakers were fast. The other speakers, Steve, AJ, Ed Lattimore, all these guys were fascinated with you, and even other guys that knew you beforehand, like Krauser. And I was impressed. You clicked with the audience really well, and it's speakers.
I'm really glad to hear that because I didn't know how they were going to take me. So I thought at one point I was like, maybe I should adapt to what I think these guys want to hear. And I'm like, no. You should just give it to them straight. So if I think they're being weird or lame or incongruent, I'm just going to go, well, Anthony invited me here. I'm only on for an hour. If you guys hate me, I'll just get kicked off and that'll be that. So I just said it. And respect to those guys who came. We got a room full of like 50 guys, strong personalities, their own lived experiences. And I was just giving it to them straight, just saying, I think some of this is horse shit. And everybody took it so well. There wasn't this hysterical emotional response. There was like a philosophical kind of, well, I don't agree with you on some things, but okay, you said something interesting there. And there wasn't this, we live in times now where there's this panicked, you said something I don't agree with. People go crazy. And everybody was just sat there going, oh, okay, that's interesting. I don't agree with you on this and this and this, but I'll think about it. So that impressed me as well. It gave me a lot of hope, of hope.
Yeah, I think with the convention, with the speakers and the attendees both, I don't talk about this as much, but I try to attract everyone that shares values with me. I think I like my values. I think I pick pretty good in life as best I can. Yeah. And you see that expressed at the convention really highly. It's a physical, real life expression that lasts 4 to 5 days. In Poland, it was a bit smaller, 50-something guys, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a collection in the quality of men, and the attendees matter too. And if you get a bunch of zombie attendees that are not willing to be active-minded and debate and challenge things and think about things, even if they disagree with it, then it sucks. So it's the quality of the speakers matters pretty much on level with the quality of the attendees.
When you had some very intellectually curious attendees there, guys who were there to learn, ego down, ego to one side, like, I'm here. What have you got for me? They'd ask good questions. They weren't asking bullshit questions. They were asking deep questions. And it wasn't like a white belt thing. It wasn't like, oh, how can I get more chicks, bro? Which I didn't know whether it would be that. It was like people come up to you and go, so how do you, when you're talking Nietzsche, how do you make that congruent with this other thing you said over here over Zen meditation? And I'm like, don't ask me questions that make me think, God damn it. I was pushed. I was being pushed by you.
I remember you commented that you thought our attendees were extremely intelligent. You told me that in private.
Yeah, they were. They're bright guys.
It's cool to hear that. Yeah. That's what I try to get. I don't like pandering to people and telling them, like, I think we would have more attendees if I put like boobs and ass all over the pages and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, if that's what if that's officially what you want to do, like, that's fine. Like, if you're a dating coach or something like that. But with the convention, it has to be so panoramic and comprehensive that I don't feel I can do that. And if I do that, we'll lose speakers and stuff. Yeah. So I try to fit all these things in with zero compromise. And that's a challenge to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, it's a really good building thing. We have, we got Steve here, we got Krauser, the pickup artist, we got Richard Grannon, the psychology guy, you got Jack Donovan, the fucking way of men, philosophy guy, and on down the line. So it's amazing to pull it all together.
Yeah, it was a very good experience. I really, really enjoyed it.
And last thing on it, I think what made you such a star at the event that was kind of a surprise hit is that you were the most outside of the Manosphere. You were an outsider.
Right.
You had, other than talking to me and like a couple episodes in the Redman group, you had very little connection with the Manosphere. Almost like Molly knew. Well, Molly knew was even more Manosphere than you were, but you're like this outsider figure. But you speak to men and women, and you teach them. You talk to them about life and everything that you do.
Yes. So. Yeah. It's and I tried to keep that. I tried to not sort of change what I do to match the convention. I was like, well, I'll just stick to what I do know. I do know about toxic relationships. I do know about emotional abuse. I do know about exploitation and people infringing on each other's boundaries and the effect of that I can have. And I really try to hold to a positive message, which is I believe men and women are better together. I really, really do. I think love is a good thing. Love is a good thing generally. You can have brotherly love, you can have love at your work, and then you have love between men and women. And it's a positive thing. It's a good thing. And saying that out loud shouldn't be controversial, but it's getting that way now. It's getting that way.
Yeah, it's getting that way in many different not domains of life, but many different expressions. I mean, in the manosphere, you might have some red pill meathead dude, we call it. Donovan Sharp calls him that, the red pill meathead. Like, you know, like you love women's for fag, like it's blue pill, whatever. But
Right.
feminism teaches this too, though. They don't want women to love men. They want this endless animosity and distrust of masculinity and hatred of men. It's
Yes.
really disturbing, and it ends up going so far as to reach politics and courtrooms and stuff.
Absolutely.
It's nuts, man. Anyway, it looks like this
Absolutely. And
guy.
it's gone way too far. Way too far now.
Yeah. It looks like this guy was an attendee at the event. Ping Printer. I don't know who this is. Listening to two speakers directly contradict each other but hash it out behind the scenes was cool to see this as well. Yeah, I've seen that a lot throughout the years. It is amazing to see that. It's a sign of real respect and a real value of debate and
Yes.
like, you know, hashing things out. It's fucking badass. That's what men do.
Yeah.
We have a question or two before I get into mine that I think is pretty good. I'm glad this guy asked it. So it's from the audience, Kaiser Sase, haha. So I've seen that this is an issue that comes up. I got this thrown at me a lot when I went through my experience with BPD chick. Anyway, fellas, there's only two ways to be in a toxic relationship. One, if you're the toxic person. Two, if you're a container of toxic waste. So in my opinion, what he's saying is that it's, and I'm skeptical of this. Like I get that there's a debate here, but I'm skeptical that let's say a healthy person without any serious lingering trauma is somehow immune to a toxic narcissist.
Right.
As if toxic narcissists would never target a healthy person.
Yeah.
And I get that if you have trauma, this is my understanding of the topic. I get that if you have trauma and weak points and these things, that gives additional hooks, so to speak, for a cluster B or a narcissist or whatever. But even if you had a healthy upbringing and all these things, and you're a healthily masculine and all that, it still doesn't make you immune to someone who's a predator. That's my take on it.
It's
So with that said,
it's correct. It's correct. I mean, the published research bears out exactly what you've said. I used to be more of the opinion that really you would need to have pre-existing problems to even begin a relationship with somebody like that. But you only have to look at the proliferation. I mean, I paid somebody to help me with my YouTube recently, and we were getting into Google Analytics and all this high level stuff. And he was saying, look at the difference between the search gravity for covert narcissism versus narcissism. So covert narcissism, where it's hidden, is way more interesting to people, way more mystifying to people, way more frightening to them. And so that indicates that, you know, a lot of people are getting tricked. A lot of people are being deceived. The person shows up with one mask, with one face. That's who you invest in, and then the mask slips, and you see something else behind the scenes. So, no, I don't think it's true that you need to have pre-existing issues. Anybody can get duped by these people because they're ninjas. You know, they're trained to deceive throughout their whole lives. They're really good at what they do. And if you're samurai, you're trying to operate by day, and you show your house, you show your flags, you show your values. You go, this is who I am. And they've abandoned that. They've abandoned any sort of moral boundaries. They'll poison your kids. They'll stick a needle through your ear while you sleep, whatever. They'll get to you. They have the upper hand in that sense. And our only way to sort of defy that strategy is to lose our morality. But that's not an option. We can't do that because then they really have won.
Yeah, there's consequences. Yeah, there's no free ride. What do you think, if you can comment, what do you think the motivation, the psychology behind this is? Now this commenter isn't saying this explicitly, but when I've seen it on the internet, this usually comes associated with it on social media and Reddit and stuff. So when people say this kind of stuff, like you can't be in a toxic relationship unless you're fucking toxic or fucked up, there seems to be an element of shaming going on. But in addition to that, it's almost like they don't want to deal with, this is my opinion, but they don't want to deal with the fact that maybe they're vulnerable to this happening. and they're kind of like blocking that out. Is there something there with that?
I think 100%. I would like to be able to put into words the psychological process that you're talking about right now, where people sort of do this virtue signaling thing. I've seen it a lot in the red pill communities. Occasionally, when pissed off guys who are red pill come to my YouTube comments, they come with this sort of virtue signaling posturing, like, I'd never let I'd never let a woman do this. And they give you these hard rules, these trite aphorisms.
I'm
So
so fucking alpha, bro. That shit would never happen.
right,
Durr.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm sat there going, but if that's true, why are you wasting your time posting YouTube comments on a stranger's YouTube channel? Like, you should be out there alphaing it up, bro, being the king of the fucking jungle. So there is an effort, I think, for people to try and, if they can convince you, they can convince themselves. So it's a weak position. Kaiser Saucy is being funny. I think he's joking. It's a trite aphorism that reduces it to two binary positions. There is an element of victim blaming to it, but there's an element of truth there, which is if we refuse to be emotional dustbins for other people's crap, it's going to be harder for them to get to us, and it will lead us to the decision to leave the toxic relationship much faster. Refuse to be a dustbin.
Yeah, the thing is that what y'all were saying about the guy being all alpha and everything, I call that shadow boxing. He's just shadow boxing at home, pretending to be something until he gets in front of a woman. And when we were small, what did G.I. Joe say? Knowing is half the battle, right? But the thing is a lot of people don't know their name. AJ, I know it sounds like a broken record, but worthiness and last name and knowing what you want. You're always going to find we always going to get it at least one time in our life or several times, depending on how much you tolerate from a woman. A woman is going to do what you allow her to do, and if she sees that you don't have that standard, I'm all alpha, on the computer, and then you're going, well, I'm sorry, please forgive me. She's going to walk all over you, man.
Yeah. This is why I love Steve, because I say I need words and I haven't got it yet, and he'll go, "There's the words you need." Shadow boxing. That's perfect. So the guy's at home in front of the mirror going, "Yeah, I could do this, I could do that." You take him in the fucking ring, and it's a different story.
Yeah. I like that a lot, actually. I usually say keyboard jockey, but shadow boxing is more apt. It's good.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, I'm just post up some comments there. These guys are fans of your channel. They watch what you do. This guy was in your emotional literacy course.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's good. That's good.
I could use some more of that. I'm still learning emotions. The color wheel. I love that.
The color wheel, mate. You got to work that color wheel. It's hard though, and we're not living in times where you'll be rewarded for that. So having that discipline to do it for yourself is difficult, but I do think it makes you more of a man. I do think it makes you more masculine, because what you're tuning into is what you want and how you feel. And if you're going, "Oh, I don't really like this, but I got to role play being the good soldier," and you push that down, every time we push down, you lose that little bit of ground in terms of your masculinity, I think.
Yeah, this is really common too. This is actually pretty well known in the Manosphere, that there's a lot of guys, and military guys will tell you this, guys who are veterans in America that are in the Manosphere, they'll tell you that you'll find some of the biggest badasses in the military, but at the end of the day, they end up being the biggest fucking betas with women. Yeah. And I've seen this in real life too. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. These guys are hardcore as fuck. They are trained. They have fucking killed people. And yet some 25-year-old little hottie will walk all over them and put them through an emotional ringer that could lead to suicide.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's bizarre. It's a really weird dichotomy, but yeah, I get it.
It happens so much that I would be tempted to say they're not the exceptions to the rule. I think they're the rule. If I see some super alpha dude who's got all that going on, and I don't know, he's MMA fighting at the weekends and going on doing private military contracts by the week, I'll be thinking he's probably, when it comes to women, he's going to have a lot of difficulties, because there seems like if you have that good soldier mindset, it's anathema to this other battle, to this other game. The strategies are like almost opposite. The way of conduct is almost opposite. Everything that you've been taught to do that works over here, this kept you alive over here. Yeah, you don't do clear. Like, number one, clear communication. I'll tell you where I am and what I'm doing at all times at HQ, so you can give me air support. switch that to the other battleground, and I don't know what Steve would say about telling people exactly where you are at all times, but it's risky, especially if you're dealing with toxic personalities.
Well, to me, like what Anthony's saying about the alpha guy that's tough on the outside but goes home. That's always, I always say that's a what you are versus, I mean, what you do versus what you are. You know,
Right.
the game, I always say the game has got to be inside of you. It can't be outside of you. And and what you are. I mean, we can all portray, I mean, we all have alpha tendencies like at work and certain things outside the house. But because we don't have a sense of self when we get home or we get in front of somebody that we quote unquote care about or have emotional feelings about, we kind of tend to let them slide on certain things which we shouldn't let slide. So it's just a what you are versus what you do, man.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we have a question here. I still want to get into some of my own, but the audience here keeps popping these up. Will Willett says, Richard et al., do you feel that even covert vulnerable narcs are unaware of what they are doing? Is it 80-20 that most of them know what they're doing and the rest are just programmed? I feel some don't.
It's a really difficult one. It's a good question. I get asked this kind of question at least once a month. It's a really good one. I'm going to try and remember what Sam Vaknin taught me about this, which is, so first of all, with covert and vulnerable narcissists, you've got to remember that what makes them different to the classic grandiose narcissist, this is according to the American Psychiatric Association, which is probably I personally prefer that text to any of the other ones. What makes them that way is shame. So they have their grandiose fantasies, they have their entitlement, but they feel extremely ashamed of those fantasies. They go through cycles. So they're not consistent. The grandiose narcissist is usually having a pretty good time because they're consistently living this hyper idealized version of themselves. The covert vulnerable narcissist is feeling high, and they're like a junkie. They're high and they're low, they're high and they're low. So that's where you'll see this double, triple, quadruple personality shine through, depending on where they are on the cycle. The more emotionally cycling you are, the more your perceptions get twisted. So if we can reduce this to some simplicity, it's a good question, Will, is let's say they lie or they gaslight. Do they know that they're doing it? Well, the more emotionally dysregulated they are, the less internal boundaries they are, and there's less self-awareness. So they might not, it's called, Sam Vaknin taught me this word, confabulation. So they'll say something that they can tell you one truth in the morning and another truth in the afternoon that are totally oppositional. But it's not that they're constantly going, haha, this is a lie. What they're doing is they're so deep in this other emotional flashback shitstorm of negative emotion that they're actually accessing a different part of their brain in certain sense. I'm not saying they're bereft of responsibility. They're not. But it's not as straightforward as we would usually want to talk about it. The boundaries blur.
It sounds like for them, it's all kind of blended together in their head. And I believe that from what I've experienced too. It really, sometimes they're aware of it and sometimes they're not. It's all just
100%.
one, it's like this movie that just keeps playing and playing and playing or endlessly or something.
It's still a field of study in its infancy. I think there's a lot of scope over the next 10 years in the proper psychological research to actually look at where the boundaries cross over with full-scale schizophrenia. Because if you're very, very confused in your story and in your lies and in your emotions, plus if you add addiction to drugs and alcohol, you're basically slipping over into full-blown psychosis where you can't distinguish between reality and truth anymore. And a lot of people who've been in abusive relationships report that to me. They say, I don't think my partner, by the end, the more desperate they get to hold on to the relationship as the other person wakes up, they red pill on the narcissistic abuse and move away, the more desperate they are, the more bullshit they're going to spew.
That's exactly what I felt when exiting my relationship with the infamous Medusa.
Right.
And philosophically, I interpreted, looking back on it, I'm impressed with myself that I hit the nail on the head with what you're talking about. And this is just not from a perspective of psychology, but philosophy. And I was like, this woman, this Medusa, is trying to destroy my sense of reality, of what is true and what is false. And I was looking at it from a point of epistemology, a theory of knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's actually trying to worm her way in my head and distort that.
Yeah.
And being an objectivist, this is like a huge no-no. I mean, objectivism is extremely hardcore for reality and reason. So it was fascinating to see that and to actually wake up to that. And the more I did that, the more she would scramble and pull and push and all these things. And she was basically, what do they call it? An exit flash. What the fuck is that term? I forget the term, but it has the word exit in it. But when you're exiting a relationship, it's, extinction burst.
Okay.
Yeah. when the relationship is in the cluster B, you know, some of these forms and stuff, they have this extinction burst.
Okay,
And
I've
that,
never heard that before. Is it like
yeah,
from astronomy or something when a star just
no,
bursts?
it reminds me of dinosaur, like the dinosaurs ending
Right.
is what it reminds me of. But I really think it's when a relationship is dying, and let's say, you know, if you're the guy and it's a chick, you know, it's a narcissist, it's that last scramble, that last desperate attempt to claw
Yes.
you back in, and it gets
Yes.
really extreme. Yeah,
Yes.
with
That's where, I'm glad you highlighted that, because I've been saying in the last 6 months, more so since the convention, I've been doubling down on this, that actually philosophy will give us more of a foothold to escape these
yeah,
negative relationships than psychology will. Psychology keeps you on the hamster wheel,
hmm,
because in psychology, we're not allowed to say, well, morally, you're wrong, because no
yeah,
morals, really. You can't really hand out moral absolutes.
it's
It's
a
all about
philosophic
how do
issue.
you feel?
Yeah. Interesting. Cool, man. Let me get into some of my own questions here before we get more from the audience.
Cool.
So, talk to me about CPTSD, which stands for Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, which you sometimes call CPTSR, Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Response.
Yeah.
What is that? Why is it important to you? And how is it different from PTSD that everyone else knows about?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the importance of it really is, if we take broad brushstrokes, is it provides us with a different model for understanding psychological distress that I think is a superior model, because it has the solution baked into the cake. So in normal psychiatry, we'd be like, oh, you're schizoid with avoidance and a dodgy attachment thing. And you go, well, what the fuck do we do about that? Take some drugs and talk about it and hope that it goes away in 10 years' time when you're fucking 15 grand out of pocket from just talking and talking.
Yeah.
CPTSD as a different model says, no, look, 95% of mental health issues are rooted in trauma and in defensive primal responses to trauma. And that if we can deal with those primal responses, we can heal the PTSD and we can heal the complex PTSD. The difference
And what
is
would a primal response be? Are they the four Fs? Fight,
that's the
flight,
four
fawn,
F's.
and freeze.
Yeah, so you're either flighting, freezing, fawning, or you're fighting. So you're an animal. We're all animals. The predator's there. You're either going to go, don't eat me, eat my hand, or eat one of my kids. I don't like this one that much anyway. That's a fawning. You're trading. You freeze, so you keep really, really still, and you hope it won't see you, and it will go for another animal that's running away. You fight it. You pick up a rock and you smash it in its skull, or you flight. You run like fuck. It's been suggested that because these responses are on different phases of evolution, that perhaps they affect you in different parts of your childhood. So if you're freezing, that's like your last ditch effort, because you're about to be eaten. And what will happen is, I imagine, if you're under extreme stress, or if somebody pulls a knife and is about to stab you and you know you can't move, or the gun's out and the trigger's been, and you know you're taking it, you'll probably freeze. You'll probably just, so then it works right the way through to flight, then fighting, and then finally is fawning. But the
And
difference
fawning would be
between,
like a kind of a feigned submission to comfort somebody or kind of manipulate them or calm them down or something like that.
you negotiate, you trade, you say, don't eat me, eat this other thing instead, don't attack me, or only don't kill me if you attack me, just eat my arm, okay, but don't bite my neck.
Okay.
It's which is, the big problem when people keep talking about toxic masculinity, is I'm always like, that really isn't the problem. There's much more with men. There's a much more greater preponderance towards fragility and towards fawning. I think men are now, where we're up to culturally, we're trained to fawn. Why? Because a lot of us were raised without strong father figures. So what else can you do but
And
beg
so
for mercy and
that would
plead?
be like the soy boy new male phenomena where they have that. If I pull a picture up of that real quick.
They are the ultimate fawn responders. I mean, that's a fawn response en masse. Our ultimate sort of end of the genetic imperative is going to be to procreate. So you go, well, can I fight you, new woman? No, I can't. Can I run from you? No, that's not going to work. That's the MGTOW movement. Can I, what do I freeze? So you got to fawn. That's
So
what these
this
guys are.
is this is a
Like these
good example
pictures.
of that, right? These are well, I this is these are. I mean, it can be funny, but this is actually a phenomena that we've talked about in the Manosphere. There's even
Yeah.
celebrity, this soy face we call it, And it's
Right.
this, I mean, some of these are really exaggerated, but really it's this, from a body language perspective, I see this and I'm like, this is like this fake smile that is supposed to be non-threatening. Like, don't hurt me, don't eat me, I'm a good boy.
That's
Like,
how I smile at my nephew who's 3 years old. When
yeah,
I do the baby voice, because obviously I don't walk up to my nephew and go, "Hey, how you doing, kid?" Like, "Hey, how are you?" That's the smile I do. My eyes are wide, and he just
yep,
goes, "Ooh, this is cool." It's a fawning. That's a fawning facial gesture,
modern
non-threatening
advertising.
facial gesture.
Yeah. Yeah, it really reminds me of something you'd see from an like a very primitive ape too, like a chimpanzee or something. Like,
It really does look like a chimpanzee face. It really does. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's fucking weird, man. Super. But
It's
yeah,
horrible.
but I think you're right though that it's what modern men have been conditioned to do. It's this effeminate crap, and they're taught to act in this way that's just disgusting. And
But
it's
the,
not
but
just,
these guys are liars because they're
oh yeah,
just they're just on their last ditch effort of what else can I, how do I solve the puzzle? And they're like children because with childhood abuse, we end up stuck in this mode of going, how do I solve the puzzle of love? How do I solve the puzzle of attachment? Daddy didn't love me. Mommy didn't love me. What do I cycle through in my primal responses to win the love? So here we have some
yeah,
good little boys trying to win mommy's love and attention, and this will get them a little pat on the bottom, I guess.
yeah,
Better
yeah.
than
It's a
nothing.
yeah, exactly. It's a fake nice guy thing. They're actually trying to they're trying to get in the pants and all that stupid crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need to learn to man the fuck up and be kind of an asshole. Women dig it. Yeah. So CPTSD. Let me ask you this question too: is CPTSD currently accepted by mainstream psychology? Is it still kind of on the fringe? Because in my understanding, PTSD was rejected for a long time too. It was initially dismissed as a legitimate condition, but now it's accepted,
Yeah.
obviously.
It's very controversial, and as a diagnosis, I would say that let me say the nice thing first. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of individual psychotherapists, counselors, therapists, and coaches who totally accept it and work within that model. God bless them. The term was originally coined by Judith Herman, who I think is now the head professor of psychology at Harvard, and then was developed and propagated and popularized by Pete Walker.
Yeah.
And the difference between CPTSD and PTSD, in brief, in PTSD, when you go into a flashback, you remember what you saw, what you heard, and what you felt. So if you came under sniper fire and you were in a truck and it was a diesel truck, then every time you smell the diesel of the truck, you'd be like, boom, you'll hear the breaking glass. You'll hear voices screaming over the radio. You'll feel the terror, the helplessness, the rage, the shame, whatever you felt at that time. And
It's
that could happen.
a major moment that has very sharp pain, is what you're saying.
That's it.
And
It's an intense, singular traumatic experience. But don't
mhm,
get, don't, I don't want any of the viewers to get hooked on singular, because it could be a series of singular incidents
yeah,
that you can remember with a memory that is visual, like a video that plays in your mind.
mhm,
CPTSD is multiple small incidents that you will not remember visually. You won't remember it as a video in your mind. You'll only remember the feeling. You'll have an emotional flashback. This is extremely problematic because when you sit down with the therapist, you can't tell them what the root incident was because you don't know. And
yeah,
there's multiple root incidents. I think when I first discussed this with you, Anthony, I was talking about shooting. So if you take a 357 and shoot a target, you have a nice clean hole.
mhm.
Whereas if you take a combat shotgun and shoot the target, you have multiple tiny fractures, but you'll cut that fucking target in half.
There's
Whereas
a
with the other
spread.
ones, never gonna cut the target in half. So it's actually in some ways not one's not worse than the other. CPTSD is a little bit more challenging, and you never get pure CPTSD without PTSD. All
Yeah.
people with PTSD have CPTSD. All people with
Well,
PTSD
what's
have
interesting to
PTSD.
me from a cultural and media perspective is that PTSD is a lot easier and simpler to portray in movies and TV.
100%.
Whether it's it was someone was raped or there was a war, you're in combat, somebody got
Yeah.
blown up or something. They can
Yes.
portray that in a movie really easily.
Yes.
And maybe they over glamorize it or romanticize it, but it's fucking real and it fucking sucks. But
Yes.
yeah, the
The
CPTSD is a lot
classic in
more.
American movies would be the Vietnam vet,
Yeah,
and we see a close up of his face. He's sweating, his eyes are moving, and he can just hear gunfire and the sounds of being in Vietnam. And we all know that's a trope. We'll go,
yeah.
he's having a flashback, which actually is a term from psychedelics. The flashback
Oh
would
wow.
be The original flashback would be like portrayed by the character Matthew McConaughey's character in True Detective, where when he was in situations of stress, because he'd taken so much LSD, he'd start to trip, and that actually made him very, very vulnerable. When somebody's about to kill him, he'd start tripping balls.
Oh shit!
So it's a drug term that moved over in psychology, which was one of the reasons I think why it was like, whoa, okay, this is some far out hippie shit right here. Plus, as far as psychiatry is concerned and the medical insurance companies are concerned, there's no real drugs that you can hand out for PTSD or CPTSD. Therefore, there's no money in it. Therefore, there's not much funding for it.
For now. They do look at, I know MDMA, for example, was used for PTSD treatment before it was outlawed in the United States.
Right.
And they had really good responses with it in actual clinical therapy settings too.
Yep,
and now they're trying to bring that back, but it's like super difficult, obviously, because it's like a class 4 or whatever the fuck drug. So it's like no one can touch it. Even mushrooms, I think, psilocybin. There's been research on that these things can help.
Absolutely.
But I've actually, you know, talking to you over the years that I have, I do believe, like you call it, physical support.
Yeah.
So these could be something, you know, they're experimenting in a lab or whatever setting with, you know, MDMA or something, but it doesn't have to be that extreme. There's also supplements and things like that that can help. Chocolate, marijuana, even saffron, that herb that is like this red herb. These things actually have antidepressant effects that have been studied pretty well. And they're not perfect, but my issue with them, as I'm realizing, is that they're not the core issue in your life. If CPTSD or PTSD is an issue, trauma, the core issue is never a lack of dark chocolate. It's never a lack of saffron supplement in your diet. So these things can help, and I think it's good, but it's like it's never going to fix the problem. Like, you have to fix the problem. And that's one of the things that I've really learned from you, is that you have to heal yourself. And I think this is like a big mission or a big idea that you promote. Like, you have to self-heal. No one can fix you. You have to fix. And the Manosphere is the same way.
I'm trying to get people to the point where they can be the coach inside their own heads or the parent inside their own heads. A lot of people with CPTSD had bad or completely absent parents. A lot of people with CPTSD have been through really, really bad situations. Excuse me, where the superego, that part of the mind, becomes hijacked. I'm going to cough my guts out. Let me go mute.
Okay. I could mute you if you need me. It'd be all right.
Please mute me.
So the Family Alpha just posted Hunter Drew, awesome guy, one of our speakers. Relationship PTSD is a real thing, and discussions like these are the only way to help men face and heal from the trauma. Only they can get men to stop bringing past baggage into future relationships. So while we got, you know, his comment up here, thank you, Hunter. What would you say to the red pill Manosphere meathead guy, the alpha bro, who's like, oh, you're being a pussy, a childhood trauma's for losers, like, just man the fuck up and shut up and, you know, suck it up, walk it off, right? Like, it's like you broke your leg, just walk it off, bitch. Like, what do you say to that kind of this dismissive attitude? Because that's really common in not just the Manosphere, but wider culture. You're a man, it wasn't that bad, shut up, you know, it's okay, just move on, let it go. Like, what is your basic response to that kind of attitude?
I haven't had many men look me in the eyes and say that to my face. In fact, I've never had a guy look me in the eyes and say that to my face, because there's a lot of things that people would try and do online in terms of the virtue signaling, the posturing, trying to convince people of who they are. But when you look into my eyes and you see a human being in front of you, spent 10 years going around the world, bouncing in nightclubs, taking steroids, massive amounts of cocaine and psychedelics, drinking himself to death, nearly getting imprisoned, you won't feel like you're talking to somebody who's just a librarian style counselor going, oh, it's all about this, let's have a cup of tea and some biscuits. Sometimes you're going to need that, but I'm the guy who's telling you this shit is real and it's fucking you up, and you know it is. So the true alphas, I was just talking to like a world-class bodybuilder this week. They're super fluent in this. When you actually speak to somebody who's really comfortable with their own masculinity, they're not trying to do an impression of a WWE wrestler that they've seen on the TV. They'll go, yeah, sometimes I hurt. Sometimes my boys, they're in pain and I can see it. And we try to talk about it, being real, being truthful, because, hey, life as a human being involves trauma, and life as a human being is challenging. You will experience pain. It's guaranteed. Look at the explosive rise of Jordan Peterson, who is basically really just trying to offer people practical, philosophical, and psychological solutions to the fact that life is frightening and painful. Anybody claiming that it isn't is either they're either like a 21-year-old who's a trustafarian. They've had everything laid out for them. Their mum is probably still fucking ironing their underpants for them. They've never been through anything. They've never been anywhere. You know, the funniest fucking thing I see now, 21-year-olds with fucking tattoos from here to here. I'm like, you've never done anything. What is this? What did you go? What does this one mean? What does this one mean? Who did you lose? Nobody, fucking idiot.
Yeah.
It drives me fucking crazy because, and people nowadays will go, oh, that's a real man. He's an alpha. I'm like, what? He fucking injected $500 worth of steroids for 6 months, got a really good tattoo artist, and that's a man? That's a man. Okay. Let's me and him
too,
throw us both in prison and let's see what happens. Let's see who fucking breaks first. That's not a man. That's a boy.
I agree, and it reminds me of Paul Joseph Watson, if you know him, a big YouTuber. He was on Twitter recently, and I forget the exact tweet. I'm not going to need to pull it up, but it went viral. And the tweet was basically, we've crossed the point in culture, and he has a huge following. But he said that we've crossed the point in culture where there are more women under 30 with multiple tattoos than women that know how to cook. And I thought that was, it's funny, but exactly, that's why it went viral. But it's like, I think he's actually right. In Western culture, I mean, for young women to think they're all badasses and they get tatted up, we've never seen that before in history that I know of. Like tattoos until very recently, a couple decades ago, were universally for men. I mean, you're tatting up an organ, your skin, and women now just get these things left and right, just like the men that are these LARPing little 21-year-olds that have done probably nothing.
You would have got in ancient, and I'm talking thousands of years ago in Northern Europe, the women would have done, but they also went to battle.
Yeah.
They fought, and they would get their fucking arms and legs chopped off and their skulls caved in and live with all the, you know, we've dug up the corpses of ancient warriors, and these are people walking around with like concussions, blind in one eye, no teeth on one side. So under those circumstances, I'm like, yeah, do whatever you want. But yeah, no, it's posturing. It's posture. I mean, I don't want to get into my fucking middle-aged grumpy man's rant about social media's effect on the world, but everything now is drifting towards spectacle, and it's what you can convince other people you can do, not what you can actually fucking do, which is why nobody's ever walked up to me and looked me in the eye and said, you need to man the fuck up, bro. And they never will. They never will.
Yep. Yeah, you're a pretty big dude in real life, man. It was good meeting you. You're fucking big
I'm
dude.
short, but I have a big belly and big breasts, and I'm happy to rest them on somebody's face if they want to get fucking cheeky with me.
Yeah.
That's my fighting style, Steve. I just rest my titties on him.
I respect that, dog.
The next question I have is you coach and you teach both men and women on your channel.
Yeah.
You've done that for a long time.
Yeah.
So how have you seen and what do you believe the differences are for men and women and how they acquire trauma and how they handle it and how they respond to it and how they heal from it? Because in my understanding, this is a general Manosphere principle. Men are more responsive to healing from trauma than women are. Now, maybe that's not true, but this is kind of the general thing that women respond less positively to trauma and they have a harder time healing from it. Some men even say that, you know, women can't heal. I don't think that's true. But I do believe that it's, as a feminine creature, that they're the female half of the human race, that trauma tends to masculinize and harden. This is my understanding for trauma in general. And for men, this can make them more masculine if they heal from it. But for women, it's like you've got to undo it and let it go. So is there any truth to that or anything you've seen with your experiences?
That's a fucking good question. I mean, it's such a good question, mate. There's a few points that I had not thought before. Is there actually research that indicates that women don't respond to trauma as well as men? Is there actually published research on that, or?
Probably. We could look it up. Like someone like Sean Smith would actually be really good at being able to find that.
He would be able to let us know. There's definitely a difference. There's definitely a difference for me as a coach in the ease of the coaching process. It's easier for me with men than it is with women.
I mean, in the Manosphere, in the Manosphere, the general idea, and I would agree with it, would be that women are not even conducive to self-introspecting in the first place. Not that they can't, but they're not prone to it, like you're kind of, I think, hinting at, to self-introspect and realize that they have trauma and then heal from it. And even suggesting that women need to heal in public right now is looked down upon. Like, women are strong and independent, and, you know, you don't need no man, and I mean, to me, a lot of feminist crap is a negative response to trauma that these women have been through. That daddy didn't love
Well,
them, or daddy was a pussy and didn't teach them how to be a woman or whatever. And now
all
they're getting banged out on Tinder left and right.
all toxic ideologies, I think, are an attempt to protect the individual from pain. You know, you go from like something as simple as a fake, cynical guy who's like a doomer, like, oh fuck it, everything is shit. Blah, blah, blah. That's
Black pill.
that's a wounded soul. And in the same way, yeah, I'd say any toxic ideology that's been adopted is there as a shield and as a mask. But this issue of women not having the propensity to self-reflect and to heal from trauma, certainly I've found it more challenging. I've had 8 years at this, so I am, but it's taken me 8 years to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I think I know what to do. So maybe even the way, because I have majority female clients, maybe even my route to healing might be more suited to women now. And I have a process, and I'll just say, look, well, I use the language. I'll say, you have to reduce your emotional flashbacks. That's from the CPTSD model. What is that? That's me saying we've got to bring you out of your emotional subjective response to what's going on and back to clear thinking about what is really happening. I need you to be present with me. If we're going to do a coaching session and you're going to start projecting your ex-boyfriend or your ex-husband onto me, and then you're going to start ranting, that's not going to help. So reduce the emotional flashbacks. Then we develop that emotional literacy so that you have that responsibility and introspection to say, how am I really feeling? Rather than just abandoning how you feel and projecting outward. And then I go into like philosophy, developing a moral philosophy. So maybe unconsciously I've done that as a solution to the problem that's presented itself to me. But yeah, there is a difference. There's definitely a difference. Whether women don't handle trauma as well, I don't, as a blanket statement, I don't know, because I've seen the flip side of that coin where
Yeah.
stuff that has brought a man to his knees, some girls have just gritted their teeth and got through it. Interesting what you said about trauma creating a masculinizing effect. That could be animus possession, where she's like, well, if there's no men here to help me, then I'll guess I'll have to fucking pick up that old shield and that old sword and do it my fucking self.
Yep.
So
And to give some context, it would be like, a hardening of the heart, so to speak. A girl who's
yeah,
had her heart broken a couple times, it gets harder and harder and harder. And this can happen to men too, but I feel like that for men that can be excessive and that can be unhealthy. But at least it creates an element of mystery and things for women to claw at and try to understand. And in reverse, I don't think men are not prone to doing this, or they shouldn't be. And it can lead to white knight syndrome and things like that, trying to fix broken women. And I don't know of any pathway where that's even remotely healthy for men to do with women. Sean Smith, talked about that in his book, The Tactical Guide to Women, and others have as well. It is interesting though. Like these are obviously things I've thought about too, and I have not come to my full conclusions. But in the
if you
Manosphere,
could,
it's a topic too.
could we do like could we do a session with Sean on as well, and maybe that this one
Yeah,
issue that you've raised, I don't want to say too much because I need to think. I need to actually process what you're saying, because there's a
yeah,
lot to unpack there. If Sean was here, he'd be able to help us with the published research on it, and that, which would be useful.
yeah. And for me, it does. Yeah, I'll hit him up, but it does not surprise me also that you've had different experiences with men and women. I mean, for
Yeah,
me, in the Manosphere, and I believe this firmly, that we say men and women are different, and
yeah,
biologically they're certainly different, and we've had a different evolutionary history of choices and the ancestors before us.
yeah.
So I'd be surprised if they. But some people will say that, these feminist psychologists and shit, that men and women are just identical and we're all just human, bro, and blah blah blah. It's like
It's
we're
funny
fucking
because,
different.
well, a lot of the feminist leaning psychologists, though, they also are usually big fans of Jung. And
Mm,
Jung was like an essentialist. He said, no, you're fundamentally different. That's where the concept of animus and anima possession comes from, is we are fundamentally different in the way in which we view the world, in the way in which we process things. Um, yeah, I'd need to have a think about that. But I think there's a lot there. I think there's a lot there to unpack. And this whole thing of the yin, the yang, the polarities, and coming together in the middle and having that balance. This is 100% true in multiple areas of life. There's many things that men can and should learn from women
hmm
that strengthen you as a man, and there's many things that women can and should learn from men that will strengthen you as a woman. which is why we need each other, which is why we need to sort of learn. We need to come together and learn from each other. You'll be a better man if you can access your yin. If you can access your yin state, you're just a fuller human being. You're a better woman if you can access your yang state as well. So yeah, it's interesting one. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, and speaking on that issue, I would see that feminism is fundamentally, like you mentioned, like this toxic, movement from trauma. But I would see it as fundamentally dividing the genders and then putting them at war with each other in this endless like combat.
Yes.
And you see that in negative, I would call it negative gender relations. And
Yes.
to me, that's what we see in America nonstop. And that was hard to really understand, even being aware of feminism. And so I went to Poland, and I saw Poland, and in my opinion, they just have very positive gender relations compared to America. Men and women get along. Women act like women. Men act like men. Even it was odd just seeing couples like be so happy together and friendly, and yet very feminine, very masculine. Just little stuff you would see that you don't see in America anymore, at least in Orlando, which is a major, pretty major, big American city. You just don't see it. And if you do see couples, you see couples obviously, but it's not. It doesn't feel as healthy. Like looking at them, like you can feel like this like weird, like both of them have fucked up beliefs in America, and they might be in a relationship, but it's like not functional and it's not healthy, and it's missing a polarity to it. And in Poland they have that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And because all of us here, we have traveled, we're open to experiencing new cultures and new languages, and we can sit and observe because we're all psychologists, we're all philosophers, we all like to think and use our brains and go, oh, why are they doing that over there? Okay, we all think about it, right? But people who haven't left the bubble of America or the bubble of UK, they'll probably just be like, no, that's not true. But it's 100% true. Not everybody's doing it the way that we are. I am full conspiracy theorist on this one. I think there's been and I'm not the first person to say this, there's been a long-term objective to split men and women up, to split the nuclear family up. And the reason for that is nothing more than consumerism. It's nothing more than materialism. Because if you're fucking each other and going to the park and hanging out with your kids and meeting up with other families, and you're sharing food, and I don't know, you're just playing music or having a nice time.
That's Poland in a nutshell, basically.
Because they don't have the money to do anything else. Spain still has elements of that. Romania still has elements. We still see that in Eastern Europe. You see it in the Czech Republic. It's great. The individualism, the consumerism, it's all about taxing people. It's all about taking as much money as you can. If two people are looking at each other, then they're not looking at the TV. If they're looking at each other and loving each other, then they're feeling good. As a salesman, as a marketer, I know that we have to have people. If you agitate people and you frighten them, you're going to make a lot more money. That's just the way the game works.
Yeah, that's marketing. So I think a lot of people do. They push pain buttons endlessly.
Absolutely.
Pain.
It's a nasty way of doing marketing. It's not the only way of doing it. You don't have to, but it's the one that works the best.
Yep.
So I think what they did, and I've never said this publicly before, and I'll probably get fucking crucified for this, is they sat there and they said, we need to split men and women up. How should we do this? Should we propagandize men and women? And they said, yeah, well, let's propagandize them. And then somebody said, you don't need to propagandize men and women. You just need to propagandize the women and turn them against the men. Once the men have lost women, they'll be so sad, so angry, and so frustrated. We can tell them whatever the fuck they want and they'll lap it up. So all they did was propagandize the women. They didn't need to propagandize us. They got inside of their heads. They got to them before we could stop it. And now men are they're like, oh, okay, I guess there's something wrong here. Why are women in the West certainly so fucking hostile to men in such a boundaryless, rage-filled way? Because they've been filled with this narrative. Men have enslaved you. Men have raped you. Men have exploited you. Men have tortured you. Anything that's wrong with your life, it's the fucking patriarchy that's done it. That's conspiracy theory. There is no fucking evidence whatsoever. There's this grand scale effort to subjugate women in the West. I call
it paranoid delusions of grandeur.
100%. That's what it is, because it's simply not true. They're conflating protection with exploitation. Yes, there was abuse. There's always going to be abuse. My God, 10% of our population are narcissistic psychopaths. But don't blame men. blame narcissistic psychopaths in the same way I'd say to the, you know, in this community, if you just blame everybody for the actions of a few narcissistic psychopaths who are behaving in a demonic way, then we'll just go, oh, well, what's the evidence? All women have a problem. All men have a problem. Let's split. Let's all go our own way. Great. What's the end result of that going to be? Population's going to decline. All of the more intelligent people, the more active people, the more entrepreneurial people, they're going to bow out. They're going to be like, oh, well, there's a problem here. And I don't, you know, so it's not going to lead to a good place. It's an anti-human ideology. And I say to feminists, you've been duped. You've been duped. This was a trick. This was not there to free you. It's not a fucking ideology of emancipation and strength. It's not it was never there to emancipate you. It was never there to strengthen you. It was there to enslave you to more consumerism and less joy. That's it. That's all it was. They want you miserable, combative, disagreeable, and greedy. And may I say, I think that largely they've won at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. It's sad, man. I'm actually pulling up an article right now that'll kind of put this to, where is it? Perfect. So I'll pull this up on the screen. So just for those of you watching, you know, he mentioned that, you know, feminism has duped women into, you know, consumerism and less happiness and less joy than ever. And this is true. Women today are, this is like demonstratably, provably true, and like huge studies that have looked into this. This is The Guardian. You know, this is like mainstream stuff. Yeah. You know, gains in women's rights haven't made women happier. Why is that? That's a really clever or nice way of saying that women today are more miserable than they've been in over 40 years, 50 years, since the 1970s.
Yeah.
They self-report. I mean, this is them when they're asked by thousands that they study that they're less happy now than they've you know been measuring it for decades. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And they're confused as to why, you know, women's rights. It's like, you didn't get fucking rights. You've been destroying culture and rationality and justice, and you just dress it up. It's like dog shit they're just putting glitter on. Yes. It's like, oh, you've systemically biased family court against men and fathers, so men are fucking killing themselves. You're getting alimony that you didn't earn, and then you're fucking buying Louis Vuitton handbags with it, trying to like drown your misery in that shit. And you wonder why you're fucking miserable. It's like you've fucked the whole system. Hello. But yeah, well, they've dressed it up. They've done a really good job propagandizing it.
This ideology, it spills out, doesn't it? I mean, it's not. It's a way of looking at the world. It's rooted in victimhood, and there is no such thing. There's never been a genocide in human history that wasn't rooted in a victimhood narrative. There's never been grand scale crimes without a victimhood narrative first. And it's poisonous. We've got to be really careful about it. You know, I've told you from the start, Anthony, because I wanted you to know I'm a left-leaning guy, but I am not. What's the difference? The difference is a classical liberal, that's me, and a social liberal. The difference between the two is huge. I believe in equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. Equality of outcome is fucking Stalinism. Equality of outcome is violence and destruction and barbarism. And this whole mentality, to me, I think goes hand in glove. They go together. They're like, we want what you have. Okay, so are you ready to start working the way the people who... No, just break it, smash it up, and give us bits of it. It's like, that's not how the world works. That's not going to make the world a better place. So when I've started talking about this on my channel, is saying feminism is a toxic ideology to a predominantly female audience, they get really upset. But I'm trying to say, no, it's not that I want you suppressed or enslaved or any of these things. I want you free, but this isn't freedom. You're in the matrix.
Yeah. What do you say in response to this commenter, Unique79? He's paraphrasing kind of what something Steve says. As Steve constantly says, if there are women who are hostile towards you, why do you care? Stay away from those women and roll with the ones who will cooperate with you.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna get hostility from people. Professionally, I have to work with all kinds of people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And, you know, I like manners. I don't like people being rude to me for no reason whatsoever. So that's a reason why I care.
I mean, my thought on this too, like, I don't even know if he's quoting Steve right on this, but the problem I see in America is, you know, like what Steve does say, you know, just pick who you're going to fucking live your life with. Pick who you're going to have in your life.
Dating is different. Dating is different to day. I gave up trying to win over hostile women when I was 33. I remember the night. I remember the moment where I was like, I'm never going to do this again.
Yeah.
So that's like 9 years ago for me.
Well, my concern with it though is that the population is drifting, and this is why feminism has to be abolished. But feminism keeps infecting more, and men and women both. But just from this perspective, more and more and more women, and
Mm,
it's like you can't, that's not good.
mm,
It's getting more and more difficult to find women that are not infected with this bullshit that you can actually have like a relationship with or anything like that. And
mm.
there's still a component of women in America, I think, that are fine, but it's like that population is dwindling. And the competition for that is getting harsher and harsher and harsher.
Well,
Whereas if you go to a place
most of
like
those women
Poland,
would be married if they are that way
exactly,
inclined. They'll already be
exactly.
married.
Yeah. No, and you can feel that, dude. You meet, some of these married chicks that are in like happy marriages or happy
Yeah,
relationships, and you can immediately, I get the sense, I'm like, this chick is not fucked up. I'm not
yeah,
surprised she's in a relationship.
yeah,
She's not part of this toxic, wheelhouse of insanity of
yeah.
feminism.
Oh, I
But
can point to women in my social circle, 4 or 5 different people who are not. They're not,
yeah,
and they are, and have been for about 7 or 8 years. Happily in marriages, and they've got kids, and it's
yeah.
all good.
Wow, that sounds like they have internalized patriarchy or something, internalized misogyny. But I do want to say that again, like a country like Poland or Romania or Spain, these places that have more traditional, they've had basically they're not as infected with feminism. Like in Poland alone, there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of women just walking around that are attractive. None of them are fat. They're beautiful, a lot of them. I mean, it's amazing the kind of quality women they have walking around, and they don't hate men, uh, just as a default. And that was just so it's endlessly fascinating to me because it's so different from America. Just walking
Yeah,
around, there's the animosity is just not there. Just in a fucking Starbucks or whatever, like they're just like women and they like men and they're like, hey, great, like you're a man, fantastic, and you just don't feel that in America anymore. It's fucked up, man.
it's hard for me as a Brit. I mean, I have mainly American audience because I want to talk about America because I work predominant like 80% with Americans, and
Hmm.
my sister lives in America, so I go there regularly. I want to talk about America, and they're like, "Don't talk about America because you're a fucking redcoat," which I am. But the extent to which the culture is ideologically infected, I would say, as if you're an American and you think, "Yeah, the culture is ideologically infected," you won't feel it to its true extent until you go out and then come back. Then you'll know. It's the same with the UK. People in the UK are like, "Oh, we're fine." No, you're fucking not. We're just
Yeah,
as bad as America. We've always followed in America's footsteps, and
yeah,
we're really sick, physically sick. Like I look at like the young people. I was living in Ibiza last year from my country. Brits, you can see a mile away. They
Ibiza's in
look.
Spain.
But
Yeah,
yeah, Spain. It's like a party island off Spain. I was out
okay,
living in the countryside doing my writing and
yeah,
that. And
got it.
you compare British to Spanish and Italian, and they just like you said. There's this weird energy between men and
Yeah,
women. There's a weird energy from the guys from who are all trying to look like Love Island, which is our version of Jersey Shore.
okay.
They're fucking guys with beautiful, beautiful eyebrows. Steve, they got nice pecs. They got the beautiful tattoos. Gorgeous they are.
Oh my
There's not a
God.
man amongst them, not a man, but they're beautiful. And they're there with these women, girls who are loud, aggressive, hostile. They're like, ooh, ooh, ooh. They speak to you and they go, oh, they laugh. They're like, oh, what the fuck? What is that? What the fuck is that? That's animus possession and anima possession to the max. That generation is having less sex than any other generation, according to the research. They've stopped fucking. Why?
Yeah,
Because the men ain't men and the women are not. And I'm not being like this fucking middle-aged rant thing, I know, but at the animal level, the male lion wants to have sex with a lioness. He doesn't, you've taken all of the polarity out of it, and there's no lust there between these kids anymore.
Richard, I did want to get your opinion, if you don't mind,
Sure.
on the "Make Women Great Again" phenomena. So here is your independent newspaper in the UK. I think it's just a pretty big paper in the UK.
Yeah.
And they put out the nastiest hit piece on us. Like, there's been a lot of controversy and outrage from the concept of "Make Women Great Again" going viral.
Yeah.
For anyone who's still not aware of that, it reached like almost 100 million people so far in 2020. It's nuts. So in my opinion, with "Make Women Great Again," what we're seeing is like this. I mean, these people calling us disturbingly misogynistic, sexist, blah 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 blah, all this bullshit.
Mm.
And I actually got to challenge one of the reporters when I went with Piers Morgan in that thing.
You did really well with Piers Morgan. It was an impressive display. You
Thanks.
did very well.
Thanks, man. I still need to do a response video to it where I can kind of hash out like what was actually going on. And that way there'll be a version on YouTube people can watch too, because right now there's not. But with Make Women Great Again, my opinion, as a completely amateur psychologist, with zero education in it, other than YouTube education from Richard Grannon and others like Sean Smith and stuff, Make Women Great Again, I think, has triggered a absolute fuck ton beyond words description amount of trauma in women. It didn't cause it, but it's triggered it. I mean, the outrage we're getting from these women, they're just baffled and shocked and angry and outraged. Part of it is because they're taught to act like that. They're having like a knee-jerk response. Like feminism says, behave this way when men act in assertive ways. Be a crazy screaming harpy on the internet.
Yeah.
But some of it's very genuine too. And so just kind of what your thoughts are with regards to Make Women Great Again, feminism, and then the outrage trauma, we'll call it, that is generated, which has been fucking enormous.
Okay, so I would say it's a very, very interesting thing that you've done. If we look at this as like an exercise in philosophy and psychology as a thought experiment, this is
Yeah.
really interesting. Let's look at what Anthony's actually said. Let's look at what you've done. Now let's turn it on its head. A group of women get together and they run a seminar called Make Men Great Again. It's run by women. It's to train men in how to be better men and give women what they want. Would all those same people who are screaming at you, who apparently are for equality, would they scream just as loud if the sex was different? If the biological sex of the organizers and the participants was different, would those same women be screaming just as loud? Because if they wouldn't be, then they're intellectually dishonest, because they're not for equality. Yeah. They're not for equality. They keep saying we're for equality and equal rights. Okay, so if we turn this on its head, why do you go silent?
Yep.
Why are you so angry? Because you know you're full of shit. You know that you're living a lie. You know that your position has been elevated beyond where it should be. And that's why you get so angry with me, with Anthony, with whoever, because if you were confident, you'd be calm. You'd just say, well, these people are just crazy. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to waste my energy on it. If a 5-year-old walks up to me with a squirt gun and says, I'm an alien from Mars and this is my laser gun, I don't run screaming because I'm terrified I'm going to be killed. I just go, oh, that's cute. That's all right. I'm just going to continue my conversation. So what I will say is my feeling is, it's not my feeling. I fucking know that this is true. The extent to which there's an emotional outrage is directly proportional to the extent that people know that they're full of shit. What we have now is nowhere near equality. We have a huge, dripping double standard. There's this elephant in the room. It's in cinema now. It's in books. It's in culture. It's in the workplace. It's everywhere. And it's a huge double standard. If this was an event organized by women for men, those same women, not only would they not attack it, they'd applaud it, because that's what fucking hypocrites they are.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Hit the nail on the fucking head. Yeah, with cinema, you mentioned some example. I mean, you mentioned that too. That immediately brought to mind James Bond. They're trying to replace James Bond, your British secret agent.
That hurts me.
Like that.
That hurts my soul. Yeah. Not James. Leave James alone, right? Leave James.
Yeah. Thankfully, it looks like he'll survive the feminist apocalypse just barely. The director or whoever has the rights to it said no. Which is amazing right now, because every other fucking movie, Ghostbusters to whatever the fuck, they just kill off all the men in terms of characters, and now it's all women. Replace all the men with all the women, and everything's equal, and the female supremacy is not a thing. Like, do as you're told. Like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. That's it's like this dripping double standard. That's what it's like. It's this Orwellian, weird, insane shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Men and gender relations are collapsing.
They already did give way on James Bond a little bit. If you watch the movies and the progression, I was so hopeful. I was so hopeful when Daniel Craig came in, because he's from where I'm from. He's from a town up the road from me, Daniel Craig. And I was like, it's one of the boys. Let's see him do well. And he was much colder as James Bond. He was crueler. He was more of a psycho. I was like, I'm into this, man. He's not the smooth, like, hey, Miss Moneypenny. He's like, I'm going to kill you. I liked it. And then he stopped having sex. Slavoj Žižek was the first guy I ever heard point this out. At the end of the movies, he'll cuddle the women. They're trauma victims. They went through this horror together, and they're like, And you're just saying, okay. And so people will be like, hey, you're the psychology guy. You should like that. And I'm like, no, wait, this isn't counseling. It's fucking James Bond.
It's propaganda is what it
He's
is.
just skied across, like, you know, trucks, firing double AK-47s, killing all the henchmen, which is what we want to see. And now that's taken. He can't have sex. He's neutered now. He doesn't actually finish the movie. He doesn't go, you know, it's not there. And if he does, they have to say things like Eva Green says, you're a throwback to another time, a misogynist. And I'm like, what the fuck is this language doing in my film? What are you doing to my film? Stop this nonsense.
So usually
it's not what I want in James Bond.
When they want to destroy a series, there's like an escalation. I think that's what you're referring to. So I agree with you on that. James Bond has been, in the Daniel Craig era, has been neutered and, you know, coddled and all this like feminized crap. But the end goal, I think, culturally, was to replace him with a woman, and that seems to be where they're finally drawing a line, but just barely. He was, I guess, he was such a masculine character with so much history as a man that the feminists failed at that attempt to take over James Bond. Thank God.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they were still effective at neutering him and demasculinizing him and all this weird crap.
And making him less competent, by the way. And not the last one, but the one before. I can't remember the name. I really hate them now. I absolutely hate them. They made him a drunk. He couldn't shoot straight anymore. He couldn't run anymore. He was depressed. And I'm like, okay, did you remember the Dave Chappelle conspiracy theory? They want to put black men in dresses. I think there's a broad scale conspiracy theory that's all men. Put all men in a dress. If they're strong, break them. If they used to be strong, make them look stupid, make them look weak. It's just it's a general move towards demasculinization that we're 100% seeing. 100% seeing. So yeah, they already
the same thing in reverse, the defeminization of women. It's all this, and I was talking yesterday on a show, and I was bringing up the Ayn Rand, novelist and philosopher, would talk about the philosophy of zero, the philosophy of the zero. And she would say this is what collectivists did and socialists and communists and shit. But I see that with feminists. They want to zero everything out. They want zero masculinity. They want zero femininity. They want zero polarity. It's zero. It's the philosophy of death is what Ayn Rand called it. Zero, like death is you're dead. You're dead. No existence. It's zero, 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 zero. And like James Bond, zero masculinity. To the point that they wanted to kill him off as a man, make him a woman.
Yeah, it's. I think there's a strong argument to say that this is evidence of cultural Marxism. There's actually it's a communist ideal. It's nothing can ever be vertical. Make it all horizontal, and I just think that's a disgusting idea. Bearing in mind, I'm left. I'm what you guys would call a Democrat. I'm Labor in this country, but that horrifies me. That fucking horrifies me.
I would want to stay with that too. Fuck, I had a little zinger I wanted to throw at you for that. Oh yeah, it just what you're talking about reminds me of the saying that you just kind of riffed this off. It's fantastic though. Your interview with George Bruno, we ended up titling it that too, and you said love is the enemy of the agenda.
Yes.
And and it actually reminds me of feminism. Feminism is just my favorite punching bag, because I think it's such a toxic piece of shit movement. But love is the enemy of feminism. And with feminism, you know, for whether they're attacking men or they're, you know, brainwashing women, it's like they hate love, they hate family, they hate romantic love, they hate positive relationships, all this toxic shit.
Yes, and it's a conspiracy. I mean, I know it. I have to be careful because I put people off when I start talking about broad scale conspiracies. They're like, okay, there's a little bit whack job now. But look, George Orwell wrote 1984 and 1948. Everybody knows 1984, the book. You've all seen the film. I'm sure if you haven't, you should read the book and watch the movie. There's a lot of quotes that get pulled out of that book and that movie, but there's a quote that's very rarely pulled out, which is when O'Brien, the main evil guy in the story, is torturing Winston, the protagonist. What's Winston's crime that gets him locked up and tortured? It's called a sex crime. What did he do? He committed the crime of seeing a girl that he found attractive, talking to her. They spoke to each other and they experienced lust, and then they left and had sex. That was their crime. This is written in 1948. For that crime, they're whisked out, tortured. They're tortured and then executed. They're tortured and executed for what? For showing love, for showing lust, and for having sex and wanting to be together. O'Brien says to Winston, we will destroy the orgasm. The whole point of our political movement, the political movement in the story is called INGSOC. INGSOC, it stands for the English socialist party. And it's this extreme version of harsh socialism where Big Brother says, we're going to destroy the orgasm. We're going to destroy love. You want a vision of what we're about? We're a human boot. We're a boot stamping on a human face forever. Zero, exactly what Anthony's been talking about. Just destroy everything. Destroy lust, destroy intellectual curiosity, destroy passion, anything you want to do, anything that makes you human, we'll kill it. But he actually says we'll destroy the orgasm to the point where it will be, people won't even want to do it anymore. He said, in order to keep the population going, once a year, we will force men and women to come together to perform their conjugal duties, and we'll make sure that they hate it. We'll make it as short, as grey and dull and miserable as possible, and we'll make sure that they hate it. And at that point, what will people have? Only the party, meaning, using slightly ancient English language, he said, all people will have is government. All they will look to is governmental control, and to have Big Brother, Big Daddy, Big Mummy take over. And isn't that what these feminists want? Isn't it what all the socialists want? They're perverts. They're masochists. They're like, oh, step on my face, Daddy. And every time there's a problem, they never want to fix it themselves. They want a tattletale. They're all a bunch of fucking telltale cowards. They want somebody to fix it for them. And what does that involve? Deplatform them, shut them up, ban them. Whatever happens, don't let them speak. They never want to fight themselves. No, because they're fucking cowards. They want somebody else to fix it for them. I started to sweat there. I was ranting that hard. Sorry.
Now we've had a ton of that with 22 convention. People for years were curious as to why 21 convention for men never got the pushback that you think it would get. Yeah. And I have some theories on that, but at the end of the day, it just never really got it on its own. Even the patriarch edition didn't get that, which you would think. Yeah. I mean, I kind of figured that they would, feminists would get outraged, and they didn't really fucking care.
Yeah.
But 22 convention, the minute we started, we had men like Steve and me and these other guys. Now we announced we're going to talk to women. The world has been, on fire. How dare we fucking talk to these women?
Yes.
Yes, it's just fucking bullshit. Yeah, I think it's because it's like you said though. The women, I think your theory is correct, or that what you're talking about earlier, that they went out rather than go after both men and women, which would be difficult and time-consuming and ineffective. Yeah. They focused in on one sex, the fairer sex.
Yeah.
And they've been brainwashing and propagandizing and weaponizing them for 100 years or more.
Yeah.
And it's really getting fucking out of control. And it's in my opinion, it's nation threatening and civilization threatening.
It is civilization threatening. I remember when you first said that to me a couple of years ago, and I was like, God, this guy's even more fucking paranoid than I am when it comes to conspiracy theories. And that's a rare thing. But no, talking to you and talking to the guys around you over the years, I've realized actually, no, this is real. This is a real problem. Yeah. This is a real problem. And, not only am I left leaning, I studied postmodernism. I studied feminism at university. And I would just say this, what we're talking about when we're talking about feminism, like you can look at certain tracks of academic feminism. This has nothing to do with that. These people are not academics. They're not intellectuals. They're not interested in truth. They're not interested in analyzing the nuance of the meaning of it. They just want their own way. They're barbarians.
Yeah, good way to put it. Yeah, you bring it to mind the years ago when you started talking to me that you were surprised at how hard, aggressive I was and hardcore about these concepts, and I believe in that strongly.
Yeah.
But even for years before that, before I even got more oppositional to feminism, which started in 2017 actually, I got more bold and more open about that. I looked for years at guys like Steve the Dean here and our other coaches for men, just in terms of dating and relationship advice and making them more masculine, making men better men.
Yeah.
I saw that then, I see that now as saving the West, as saving America.
Yeah.
If we don't have feminine women and masculine men, we're all fucked.
Yeah.
Like America does not have a future with effeminate, weak men, these pussies, and these masculine, tatted up harpy women that are screaming about the patriarchy that hasn't existed for 80 to 100 years. Yes. It's like, where does this lead? It leads to fucking death, man. It leads to the collapse of the country. Like the Soviet Union, people forget the Soviet Union fucking collapsed. This was a major superpower that nobody's been there lately because it's fucking gone. That shit does not exist anymore. It has the remnants have broke up.
Yeah.
But that's it, man. I don't want my country to die. I don't want Canada to blow up. I don't want the UK to fall apart.
Yeah.
I want these countries to do well. And to do that, you need a lot of things. And one of them is make women great again. But you also need the coaches like Steve and these guys and you talking to men directly and making them more masculine, whether it's men, young men, old men, fathers, like all these things.
There is an interesting part of that. I wonder what you think of this. I've been asked a couple of times, like how people have said to me, how do I be more masculine? And I've sort of approached it not from anything that you need to add on but maybe just to reduce the editing. And I think I've nicked that from Patrice O'Neill, because he would say what we as men, I didn't really understand it the first time I heard it. I do now. We edit ourselves. So just don't do that. Just don't turn the volume. There's nothing really you need to add. You're a man. Just reach in your pants, and you'll know it's a fucking fact of life.
Breathe through your balls. Breathe through your balls.
Right. I mean, it's like you already are that thing. So it's like a lion saying to me, "Oh, how do I lion?" I'm like, "Well, just do you, and you should be okay." It's the editing, it's the propaganda that really needs to be exorcised from the mind, right?
Yeah, and I agree with this largely. I do think that men need to help other men and lead other men to be men. I mean, in essence, this is a father, teaching his young boy to become a man, but that's been eradicated in culture.
Yeah.
So I think the manosphere is a really positive development. It's people say it's the same thing as feminism, but for men, and it's not.
No,
feminism is a very negative thing for women and men. The manosphere is a very positive thing for men and now women too.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason they hate it so much, and they're learning to hate it. They feel threatened by it because it's a real threat to feminism. I think that's actually what Make Women Great Again did, is it put the manosphere on the map now for being a legitimate cultural threat to the feminist establishment.
Yes.
Whereas before it didn't, men's rights guys and the MGTOW and all these things, like it was never enough to get on the radar as like a real threat, like, holy shit, this is real.
Yes.
I think that's why these whether it's Susanna Reid and Piers Morgan or the chicks on that show, The Real or The View or whatever, like they're freaking out because they see this and they're like, holy shit, that's a great idea. That could actually like flip feminism on its fucking head and make it go away, which is what I want to do.
Okay, but clarify, like there's nothing to be afraid of. You're not saying you want to stick women in burqas and exploit and enslave, right? You want them to be happy, right?
If a girl wants that one-on-one, like that's fun, But no, in general, no, of course not. I believe very strongly in personal freedom and individual rights and the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
I want a positive, healthy, masculine, rational future for all Western nations, and I think it's a very good thing. I even say masculine, but to me, masculinity is very inclusive. Just like a father who loves his wife and his daughters is an amazing, strong man. It's like Steve here. Steve has like who knows how many daughters, like half a dozen or something. But I really mean that. And so we don't need to get in the whole features masculine thing necessarily, but yeah, it's a very positive thing. And I want the best for men and women. Yeah. And I think Poland is a specific good example of that now. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Yeah. But yeah, men and women get along. Men are masculine. They like you mentioned, they're tapping into their biology, to their physical nature, and then expressing that in behavior and psychology. And women too. Yeah. Women need to embrace. I said last night, I just actually got back from hanging out with this chick. I was just tweeting, and I'm like, men should strive to be not just as masculine as they can be, but as masculine as they can be over a lifetime. Self-improvement forever. Yes. And women should do the same thing. You should generally, not literally every woman on the planet, but the vast majority of them should strive to be the best woman they can be. They should be as feminine as they can, and then pursue that over a lifetime. Endless improvement. There's always room to improve. And yeah, so totally, it's a very. I don't want fucking. These feminists, they say I'm like I look like the guy from Handmaid's Tale or some shit, where they have women in like burqas and shit, and it's crazy. It's absolutely.
So to you, it's like it's part of the Americanism that you hold would be you want an independent American girl. You want women to be independent, free, strong, and able to just get on with whatever they want to do, right?
It's tricky because I know you mean well when you say these things. My concern with the strength and independence is like,
I might be using a feminist language. I mean it as a psychologist. So if you're independent, then you have your personal sovereignty. You don't have the emotional dysregulation. You don't have the trauma. And if you're strong, you have personal agency. That means that you can live authentically, whatever you want.
No, that I'm on board with. That everything you just said, 100%.
These buzzwords, they get hijacked. That's what they do, man. They pervert the meaning of language.
Like, for example, let me put it to your audience and anyone who sees this later. If you're a woman watching this, I think legitimate, genuine female strength, for example, is pursuing femininity, being feminine, and it can even mean having the courage to be submissive for a man that you love and that you respect. Submission is scary for women. It has risks that are biological and serious, like getting pregnant, which you can then fucking die or starve to death, and you're weak and vulnerable for 9 months, as well as when you're nursing. It's like, Yeah, so the feminist strength, the feminist crap that they promote, the strength, strong, independent women, that's a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, it actually takes courage for you to be feminine and to be a woman and to choose to be submissive to a man that you admire and respect and all that. And it's actually very weak of them to dismiss all this, and then basically they're projecting. So when women say, I think women are projecting, psychological projection 101, when they say they're strong, independent women, they're not at all. Not in the sense they say, and not even in a genuine sense. They're actually very weak and codependent to the point that they're on Instagram projecting what they want, and they can't even admit it. They want a strong, independent man who's masculine and tough, and they can't even admit that to themselves, that they want to be held and that they're fucking scared or something.
There is a layer to this that I've seen that I found disturbing. 2 years ago, I went back to Malaysia, which is a majority Muslim country, and there's an old training partner of mine from like 10 years ago. We've been training partners in the gym, and she told me on the day before I left, she's 29, and she was saying, I want to tell you something I'm really embarrassed about. And I said, what? She said, don't laugh at me. I said, I won't. She said, I don't what her mom teaches feminism. She says, I don't want to run my own business. I said, well, fucking don't then. She said, I don't want to go out there and be a career woman. I said, well, fucking don't then. She said, all I want to do is I want to have kids. I want to get married and I want 3 kids. And then I just want to be a mom. And I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about? Do that then. And she's like, I can't do it. It's not just that her mom is teaching feminism. It's that in a majority Muslim country now, like Malaysia, that is the new sin. It's not a sin now to not have kids and stay at home and be a good wife. It's a sin to not go out, run your own business, make loads of money. She doesn't feel like she just has to go out and work. She feels that there's a pressure to go out and be rich. And she's like, I don't know how I'm going to get the time to do that and raise 3 kids. And I was just like, I can tell you straight off the bat, you won't. You've got to choose. Yeah. You can't.
Yeah, you're talking about what is virtually impossible, having it all. It's like, do you know how fucking hard that is? Like, it's nuts as a woman.
So that little piece of ideology, and I realize that we're running out of time, is something that I just really want to highlight. It's so dangerous and so poisonous. We don't all get to live forever. Sorry, apart from what the fucking advertising says, we're all going to die. And we do not get to have it all. We never have. We never will. We're finite beings, and that's what makes life on Earth precious. We don't get to have it all. We have to choose. It's advertising, man. It's TV. Good TV is fucked with people's minds. It's propaganda, but we definitely don't get to have it all.
Hey, can you guys see me right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can't see shit, but I guess you guys can see me. That's good enough.
We can see.
That's odd. My computer's like fucked up. I'll keep going. See if I can fix it. So yeah, anyway, Rich, that really hits the nail on the head for what I was getting at. That, like you mentioned, this chick that wants what would be considered a traditional life or whatever, right? She wants to have children. She wants to have a family. She wants to pursue that. I call that motherhood first, like America first. I'm like, that's motherhood first.
Yeah.
And that's actually very rational. I think that's actually biologically sound to do that.
Well, bear in mind, she's only ever told me. She's only ever told a non-Muslim foreigner to the country, and it's this big secret. She's like, I want to have kids. And I'm like, what the fuck? Just go do it. And she's like, I can't. It's just,
well, that's
it's not allowed.
I call that the feminist bullying. Susanna Reid, for example, on Piers Morgan was shocked that I was saying that feminists are bullies. She's like, I'm a feminist. I don't bully anybody. It's like, yo, like girls who want children are afraid to even talk about that in public because they feel like shit. You have poisoned them and propagandized them.
Yeah.
So I actually think, let me put this to point the case in point here. The strong women today that are genuinely strong have the strength to stand against this feminist bullshit and pursue what they really want deeper in their heart, which in most cases or many cases or whatever, they want to have children, they want to settle down, they want to pursue a family first. And then maybe later in life, they go out at 43 or something and they pursue higher education and they pursue a career or they start a business, which, fine, that makes like complete sense. But don't throw away your fucking eggs and your fertile years and your health getting banged out on Tinder, drinking like a fish, and just ruining your fucking life.
Yeah.
And then getting into a bunch of debt and shit for student loans and all that. It's stupid, man.
Yeah.
Super stupid. But yeah, the strong women today are the ones who are rebels, and the rebels today are the ones who pursue what would be considered traditional femininity usually.
So what you're saying is they're the ones who've kind of just said fuck you to the propaganda, fuck you to that culture of Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It does
Yeah.
take strength to stand out against propaganda and to not go with the whole tribe, the whole group. The whole tribe, the whole group is going over there, and you're going, nah, I'm not doing that. I want that.
I mean, strong women don't hate men; they love men. And women today in America and Canada and the UK, they don't love men. They're taught to hate men and distrust masculinity, which is that to me means they're psychologically weak. They were not strong enough to withstand, for whatever reason, lack of upbringing or their own personal choices or whatever. They lack the strength to stand against that crap. But men are responsible for this too, right? Men, these beta pussies, they lack that strength too, and they're weak, and they go with the flow, and they do the new male smile and all that fucking weird shit. That's gross, man. That's not, it's all that strength and independence. That's why when you mention that, I'm like, well, yeah. Strength is a good thing psychologically.
Strength and independence. Let's just clear up what we mean there.
Yeah. No, I believe firmly though, and I mean, for everyone, psychological strength, but what that looks like, and it's a hijacked word. They're Orwellian crap. They've hijacked it and slandered it basically. So let me get into this. So we do, whether it's me or Steve or we have a bunch of other guys come on the show, Donovan, all these guys. A lot of Red Man Group is personal advice for guys. How to be a man, how to be a better man, how to be more masculine, how to be red pill aware. So what are the benefits for the guys who watch the show regularly, where we usually focus on these kind of advice topics? What are the benefits of healing from childhood trauma or even relationship trauma? They had a BPD chick, an ex-girlfriend or two or whatever. What are the benefits of healing from that trauma for men? Like, why should they do that rather than just, go study red pill or read this book or do that? Like, what are the benefits to them for their life?
I think if you if you have unresolved trauma, you're carrying a lot of CPTSD, and then you just throw yourself into PUA or MGTOW or red pill, it's going to be really, really difficult to live authentically. These things might become like a fetish that you use to protect yourself with, to keep reality at bay with. When you've resolved these issues, well, I mean, I've got recent experience of it. I know, Anthony, you have. Like, your whole perception cleans up when your emotions, your emotional flashbacks are reduced. You see things clearly. You can connect with other human beings clearly. You're not as weird and eccentric in your interactions. I mean, I know for years I struggled interacting with people because I was sending out weird signals to them that just made them feel like I was a nice guy, but a bit of a fucking screwball, and it wasn't what I wanted. When I reduced the emotional flashbacks, all of that stopped. So you're definitely far stronger. You're more you. You're more authentically you if you're healed from these emotional flashbacks and these childhood traumas.
Yeah. Well, on that note from healing, what kind of course do you have coming out, Richard Grannon, that deals with these things, such as female psychopaths from surviving to thriving? Course coming soon.
A course is coming soon. Well, everything is shot. All the material is there. It's just waiting for me to get it set up. And it will be available from femalepsychopath.com. And what we'll be showing you how to do is how to recover specifically from these kinds of childhood trauma, how to emotionally re-regulate yourself, how to be masculine in a way that isn't weird or posturing or trying to fake this, weird way of being in the world. And hopefully it'll just make guys feel more comfortable with themselves. And it comes from the perspective that we've been talking about here, which is that we believe in people coming together. We believe in love. We believe in people connecting and attaching safely, and men and women being together. So we'll be releasing that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but it will be available from femalepsychopath.com.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, and so to full disclosure too, we actually filmed this for Richard in Poland. The main bulk of the workshop. I think if a few additional videos you're adding onto it and things like that.
Yeah. There's things that I just wanted to flesh out what was covered in the Poland workshop. So that the guys have some real concrete stuff that they can walk away with and apply. And it's from my perspective. It's from the perspective of somebody who's looking at this situation from childhood trauma, CPTSD, resolving that. And I hope, therefore, rather than learning a bunch of quick techniques that you'll use and then they'll drop off, it'll actually just change your way of being in the world at a more profound level, so that the techniques will be secondary. Like, you just be you be authentic, you be in the moment, you're comfortable with yourself, and then you'll know what to do and what to say.
Fuck yeah. I'm looking forward to it, man. I think the Manosphere has never seen a course or idea like that hashed out at that extent. And the name is obviously a play off of something I did years ago, you know, surviving a female psychopath or how to survive. But there's a difference between surviving and thriving.
Yes.
So it's female psychopaths, you know, from surviving to thriving.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. And I think a lot of guys come to the Manosphere. It's one of the main ways they find the Manosphere. They went through a traumatic relationship or they had a shitty upbringing, and they're a mama's boy or whatever, and they've woken up. Something has triggered them to like search for information and wake the fuck up, become more of a man, undo this brainwashing they've been fed from feminism and stuff.
Yes.
Or there's a traumatic relationship, like, or a combination of the two.
And this is
probably a combination of the two. But yeah.
This is a fundamentally masculine solution. If you look at the yin yang spectrum, thriving is at the yang end of the spectrum. A lot of the guys, especially some of the attendees that I saw in Poland, they are traumatized and they're kind of hidden. So yin is in shadow and it's hiding. We want you yang. We want you out, proud, visible, talking to people, connecting with people. You're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to be goofy and awkward sometimes, but it's not the end of the world. There's a level of robust confidence that I would like to try and instill in people with this course.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, man, I love having you on the show, man. It's been great. I think you fit right in, and welcome on anytime.
Thank you, sir. It's been a real pleasure.
Yep. Well, we'll start winding up. Guys, if you want to reach out to learn about Richard Grannon, you can go to femalpsychopath.com, and you'll see the course there pretty soon. And also his website is linked in the description of this video, or not his website, his YouTube channel. That's blowing up. Go subscribe. Help him subscribe. Share the channel. He's going to hit 200K real soon. Guys, closing remarks. Steve, Rich, anything you guys want to close out before we wrap up today's show? I appreciate both your time today, guys. 100%.
Just that to make sure that what people walk away from with this is, you know, because we're talking about some heavy stuff here, is set the intent inside of your head of what you want. Like, do you want love in your life? Do you want to thrive? Do you want to be a healthy, happy human being who's living a full life? Or do you want this weird half-life full of rage and anger and sadness? You know, set your mind to that. If you want to be healed, if you want to be out there thriving, you want to be living a good life, you've got to have that in your mind. You've got to set your intent, be like, I want to be healed. I want to be happy. I want to be experiencing love and connection with other people. So make sure you set your intent.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say that this is great, man. Hey, like he didn't pay me for this, but I can't speak highly enough about that man, Richard. He's cool, man. If you hang out with him in person, you'll see he's just laid the fuck back, man. He's just laid back, cool, chill, cool on the other side of the pillow. So guys, he's a real motherfucker. Excuse me, he's real. I like the dude, man. No,
yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Anthony picks him right. Anthony grabs the best of the best, and he positions them for you guys to listen to. Soak up the information, man. This was awesome, man. Very great job.
Yeah. I concur with Steve's assessment. He's a real awesome motherfucker. So 100%. Yeah, now Richard has been. I mean, all the speakers have been influential in my life. From Steve to, you know, Socrates, and literally on and on down the line. You know, there's 100 and something guys at this point. But Richard Grannon has in particular been a very big help personally to me. Healing from my own trauma in my life, not just the Medusa crap, but even long before that. And it's been huge. It's been life-changing for me. And I say that literally and sincerely. Not just like changed my life, changed the world, but like really changed how I think about the world and view myself as a man, view masculinity, understand trauma, relationships, all this stuff. And it's fascinating. I mean, it's really male-female relationships in particular are the cornerstone of how this entire convention started. You know, young men getting together to learn about women and how to interact with them. And seeing that evolve now to things like fatherhood and make women great again, and then the trauma elements and healing it's just fucking awesome. It's badass. I love it. It's the love of my life, and these guys are a huge part of that and making that happen, making that flow.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up. Tune in next week, 11 a.m. That'll be episode 98 of the Redman Group. And make sure you tune in every Monday for Steve's show at 8 p.m., the Red Pill Mindset. And we might even bring back the Red Line at some point on Friday nights. So peace out, guys. Appreciate you tuning in and tuning live to the show. Hit the like button and the share button to help the show, and drop a comment. Anything helps. YouTube likes the activity to make it go viral and stuff. Peace.